I'm Ari Gronich, and this is Create a New Tomorrow podcast.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Let Fear Bounce. This is Kim Lengling, your host. I am so glad that you're able to join us today. I hope you've got your favorite cup of coffee. You're ready to sit back and relax and listen to another wonderful guest that I have with me today. His name is Ari Gronich.
Gronich, correct, yeah.
Gronich. And his bio, I'm going to share a little bit about him with you folks. At 18, he began wellness programs with three major corporations, ushering in a new paradigm for employer-based healthcare. And over his career, he has helped Olympic as well as Paralympic athletes break world records, win gold medals, and earn legacy championships. His mission as a visionary thought leader is helping to create a society designed from the ground up to be in harmony with nature, thereby eliminating the causes of disease and shifting the systems of medicine from an emergency mindset to a proactive mindset. So Ari, thank you so much for joining me. I've been excited about this podcast because I want to learn so much more about what it is that you're doing. Also, you are also a published author. And you have a book that's entitled A New Tomorrow, as well as a textbook called it's Performance Therapist Certification Course. So first off, tell me a little bit about your book and your textbook for therapists, and then we're just going to roll from there.
Sounds good. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm really glad to be here. And the book A New Tomorrow is really it's about the medical system, but it's about every system. And it starts with the concepts of the butterfly effect and our consequences to our consequences to our consequences to our consequences of a decision that we might make right now. So then it goes into common sense and critical thinking. And again, it's based on the healthcare system, which is really quite broken, as we know. And that's been my bailiwick for 26 years, but it expounds onto agriculture and infrastructure and so on, because what a lot of people don't know is that medicine began with infrastructure. And so that's where the book kind of gets moving, and it's designed to activate your vision for a better world. So as you read through it, I give you steps and tips and thoughts and things and questions that you can answer. So I suggest to people that they read it with a journal next to them and start answering the questions that come up in the book about what your life passion is. What is it that you want to be activated for? What's the world that you want to see, and how can you start creating that new tomorrow today?
I love that concept. And I might have to go on and get your book after this podcast, I think. Love that concept. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Tell me more about how you've worked with numerous athletes over the years, Olympians as well as Paralympians.
Yeah, I I was very lucky in my career and the school that I chose to go to, and I just kind of happened to run into these coincidences. You mentioned I started three of the first corporate wellness programs. Well, those companies, it wasn't a big mind that made that. It was, I'm running the clinic at my school. We need more patients. These three companies are right backed up to our school. So why don't we just take our clinic to those companies? They happen to be Fortune 500 companies, and they happen to be, very large. And some of those programs are still active today. But it was really just a necessity thing with the sports. As I was going through school that first year, we ended up going to a health fair. And this health fair was at a big coliseum, and there was a sports game that night. And two of the athletes that were going to be playing came over to our booth, and I ended up working on them. I ended up at the stadium that night on the court, and I ended up running out onto the court to to help with an injury just by instinct. And
Yeah.
I ended up with that team for a year
Wow.
as an intern. I was not paid. I was not supposed to be there, but I got to work with the trainers. I got to work with the surgeons, the doctors, that whole
Mhm.
entourage that's behind the scenes that nobody ever sees with an athlete. And so I learned so much from that, and ended up culminating in going to the 2004 Paralympics. And I was one of 5 team captains that led a team of 50 therapists from 18 countries. And we worked on all the athletes. And it was probably one of the highlights of my life yet let career.
Oh, I can imagine that would just be amazing, amazing, truly, because you're surrounded by people that have overcome so much, and they're heroes in their own right, out there
Yeah.
blazing the trail, and to be a part of that, yeah, what an amazing experience that must have been.
Yeah, absolutely. The first time somebody comes into a room and takes off their leg, for instance, it's just like, oh, okay. Or you're helping somebody who's paralyzed get onto the table, and the seizures begin, the muscle seizures begin, and you give them a breathing technique, for instance, that helps calm those seizures down almost immediately, where they might have been going for 5-10 minutes
Mhm.
previously. So, uh, just an amazing experience having uh, an athlete put a gold medal on my neck was pretty amazing.
Yeah, well, I get goosebumps just hearing you talk about it because that would be amazing, and it's a once in a lifetime thing. I have a dear friend of mine who tragically lost a leg in a motorcycle accident years and years ago, and she is now world known around the world for her running. Her name is Amy Palmero Winters, and I believe that she was also in the Paralympics. But she has broken world record after world record for the past decade for being in these crazy, crazy hard triathlons and Ironman things. I mean, I don't even know what they all are, but I follow her. She's just an amazing individual, and nothing has ever stopped her. She was a runner before she lost her leg, and nothing's ever stopped her. And her life word that she has on all of her shirts that she wears simply is believe. And she has been such an inspiration, and that's just one person. I couldn't imagine being around so many like you were. It would just be, well, it would just, your heart would be overflowing, is what it would be.
Yeah, absolutely. It was, a lot of those athletes come from places where they're literally ostracized out of the community. They're not allowed to live within the community. And they are literally doing this to save their life because their country needs the athletes. And so, to compete for them. And so when you get 6,000 of them all in one place, and they all see that they're all the same, you know, and they're competing. It's very different than the Olympic athletes. Let's
Hmm.
put it that way. And they
Yeah.
break world records left and right.
Yeah.
It used to be back when they started, it was because you're disabled, you can't compete in the Olympics.
Right.
Now it's because you're so enabled with your technology, the springs in the legs, all the things that they have. Now you're enabled, so you can't compete in the Olympics because
Right. Right.
you're too advantaged now. and
Yes.
and so it's crazy what technology has been able to do for the sport, for the people in general, and allowing them to compete like that in a place where it's like they're of equal value in almost every country except for the US.
Hmm.
It's really quite fascinating how little coverage on our Olympic channel, whatever one that
Right.
is that year, there is of the Paralympics, which, by the way,
Right.
has happened for over 50 years. just, 10, 15 days after the Olympics.
Right. And you're
Always
right.
same time.
We don't see it that often. You're right. There is not a whole lot of exposure for it. And simply, like I had shared earlier, a very dear friend of mine, that's why I pay so much attention to it, because she was involved years ago and now she continues, she's my age. She's probably 50 now. And she's still doing it, breaking world records. And it blows my mind that we don't see more of that.
I know. Isn't it crazy?
Yes, it is.
The amount of value that I guess the powers that be place in, the citizens, because we haven't even had an opportunity to view it and then vote with our viewing eyes, right? Because in
Hmm.
TV speak, it's all about the viewership. And so we haven't even had that opportunity because they just have thought that we weren't worth the advertising.
Right,
The advertisers felt like it wasn't worth paying for advertising, whatever the case may be.
right.
I think it's time for a change for sure, because those athletes are so inspiring, and and frankly, it's some of it's amazingly hilarious, like blind soccer.
No, it would be fun.
I mean, really, it's hilarious and amazing that they're doing it and
Right.
competing like that. But it's cool. Murder Ball they made a movie called Murder Ball. It was a documentary about the wheelchair rugby team, and yeah, it's dangerous, but it's fun to watch, and they're crashing into each other. So come on, US, let's get some Paralympics going.
Exactly. Well, and now we have these platforms that we can at least share some of it.
Absolutely.
The mainstream doesn't want it, we'll get it out there somehow.
That's right.
By golly. So tell me a little bit more about you've got so much. You're your mission as a visionary thought leader is helping to create a society designed from the ground up to be in harmony with nature. So share some of that. Share some of
Yeah.
that thought process and how it is that you're working towards that.
Yeah. So let me ask you first, is this considered an adult show?
Yes.
Cool. So I'll start with a quote from me.
Okay.
We made this shit up. We can do better.
Exactly.
Okay. So I'm going to start from the premise that we made it all up. This is all a figment of our imagination. We took our imaginations and we created buildings and we created money and we created jewels and we created all those kinds of things. We didn't make the jewel, we made it cut so it looks
Mhm.
pretty. So we want to sell it for a lot of money because we made up the money and we created the value for what we create. Like we've created this whole mess that
Right.
we're in,
Hmm.
and we can do better. We can learn from what we've done and say, okay, but how do I want life to be for me? How do I want it to be for the future of my kids? How do I want it to be in the future in general? And then what am I doing right now to create that? So we start with the premise that we made it all up, because if we know that we made it all up, then we know that we can make something else up.
Hmm.
We don't have to be married to the concepts that are in our past just because we know them and they're comfortable. The biggest fear is the fear of the unknown. So if you're creating something new and you don't know what you're, doing, that's where you stop. So my goal is to get people unstuck. You know, where is it that you're stopped in whatever it is that you're passionate about? Why isn't it that you're doing that every day of your life? And so when I talk about being in alignment with nature, everything from our corporations um, to our society, our streets in general, are designed in these grids,
Hmm.
right? You go into a company and it's gridded out and cubicled and all that stuff. It's grids, 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 grids. You look at farmland that's being harvested regularly, it's grids. But if you look into nature, just about everything in nature is circles. It's circular, right? You look into the middle of a tree, cut the trunk, circles, and at the base of everything is the spin of an atom, which is also circular. So if all matter and all things in nature are circular, why aren't we designing a world that's more circular in nature? So I'll give you an example. This is from another book that I'm in the process of writing called Tribal Living in a Modern World, the Corporate Culture Revolution.
Mm.
And really, it's about how corporations structure themselves and how they might choose to do it differently. But the idea is that you go back to a natural cycle. So a natural cycle is kind of like a master and then an apprentice and then an intern, right? And it's in concentric circles. So if you're doing a project, you have that in a concentric circle. You have the accountants, you have the engineers, you have all the people for a specific project you have in that circle. And you've got the hub is the project manager, right? Now, don't you think that would work a little bit more efficiently, a little more performance doing it that way than, say, having the engineers in one building, having the accountants in another building, having all the, you know, marketing people in another building? If you put them all in one space now, and if you did that, whereas the masters, the person who's been doing this a long time, and they're not doing any work anymore, all they're doing is teaching. And the person that they're teaching is the apprentice. That's the next level up. So you don't have the hierarchy of, say, a supervisor or people that are above you,
Hmm.
other than the person who's teaching you. And then the intern is kind of like the gopher who's learning everything along the way, right?
Right.
But you do that system, and now you have a nimble project that isn't taking a bureaucracy to pivot or get done when the tides shift. And in the modern world, we need kind of like a Legos, style thinking, where everything connects and can be taken apart and put back together in a totally different way. And so that's kind of the idea of this. Is you could break an atom apart and put it somewhere else. Well, you could, take the master out, move the apprentice up, and put in
Hmm.
a new intern, and you can shift the teams and stuff that way. But kind of get the idea that you're doing that in a circular way. When you're thinking of roads and streets, where do you think the most dangerous places are? Corners and alleyways, right?
Yeah, intersections and such. Yeah.
Because of the grid. So if you took away those harsh edges off of nature, so to speak,
Hmm.
you would create more safety, more
More
safety,
roundabout, more
and more,
roundabouts.
right. And more safety means
Right.
that people's nervous systems are less stressed. When people's nervous systems are less stressed, there's less crime. There's less, there's like, so if you butterfly effect all of that down, you kind of get that we can create something different that isn't anything like what's been. And so we don't need to be afraid of what's been and the titles and labels that we've put on it, like red or blue or socialism or communism or democracy, or, like, we don't need to put any of these old labels on
Hmm.
something that we're creating new. We can create something new that has nothing to do with any of that, and
It's
we
just,
can create a better
it's just,
society that
yes,
is more regulated by the people that are choosing how they want to be and how they want to live.
just humankind.
Right.
Like you were saying with the labels and such. red, blue, whatever. It could just, just humankind. There's too many, I think there's too many labels, which gives, in turn, gives people the illusion of power. And I like your concept and how you're going with that, and I like the circle. That's a nice visual for me. It brings it into perspective and clear focus for me how you explained that. So thank you. That's fascinating stuff there, and certainly worth thinking more about.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, think about it this way. If you went to if you were sick, for instance, and you went to a facility, and that facility was like a hospital, right? It's all segmented and gridded out. Now, let's say you go into my style of a facility. You walk in, it's a circle. You've got, when you go in for your assessment, you're in the middle of a circle and you have an acupuncturist and a physician and a chiropractor, maybe, and whoever you need based on what your intake form was, right? Showed. So you have all those people in the room at the same time. They're all talking about what is going to happen to you and what you're going to do and how you're going to get better. So you're the hub of that circle
Right,
of
right.
care, right? Why do we
But it brings
call
it
it
it brings it
circle of
more
care?
into it makes it it's more it makes it more community minded. You don't feel like you're just a number going in. And then here we have to send you off to this person. They're going to have you take some more medicine over here. Then we'll send you to this specialist. That whole how you're describing it to me, you're the center of attention from all of these people, and it's a community coming together to
Right.
to help,
Right. So
to
you
help
think
and
we'd get
assist.
better? We'd probably get a lot better if we did it that way. We probably would not be as sick as a society if we did it that way. And if we learned about each other's modalities and, things, just like if we learned about each other's religions, if we learned about each other's belief systems, philosophies, if we
Mhm.
spent time talking to each other without judgment of or reaction to our side is right, and we can do that now because there's no labels, right? But
Right,
if we were to do that in general, learn versus judge and be ignorant about, right, which is what
right.
stems hate and fear and all those things. Don't
Yeah,
you
I
think
think
we?
and I always I call that the sheeple mentality. Those ones that just follow, they blindly follow. And they will follow with their hatred or their judgment. But I think a lot of it also, they have a lot of fear simply because they have not educated themselves on any of it. They're just blindly following words of someone else or, whatever it is. They've not educated themselves enough on that specific thing. They're just blindly following. And I think that's a big problem as well, and if people weren't doing that, and it all stems down to fear of the unknown, fear of what they don't know, but they're not willing to educate themselves on it.
Yeah, I'll,
That's
yeah, I'll tell you my other favorite saying. One of my other favorite sayings from me is silence is a bully's best friend. So get loud. Okay.
yeah,
So I added on the end, but so why is it that doctors who know better are not stepping up in more, quantity, right? It's
right.
because they're afraid of the bully. Who's the bully? The AMA, kind of like
Insurance companies.
insurance companies, pharmaceutical companies. They're afraid of
Uh,
the bully.
yeah.
But if only one person steps up and gets loud, then there is room for that fear.
Yes.
Now, if 10,000 of those people get loud together, organized, less need for the fear. When it's a million,
Hmm.
less need for the fear. we have at least 10,000, 20,000 docs, people in the medical field that look at this system and go, this is not getting people healthy. I don't like this. We should do it different. And those people are doing things differently, but doing it quietly.
Yes,
They
you
need
are.
to
You are
get
correct.
loud.
Yes, I have a perfect example of what you were just talking about. There are those folks that are the doctors and physicians and whatever that are out there, but they're quiet and they're much fewer than the others. I was speaking to a lovely lady yesterday who had a stroke at the age of 53, and for 3 years she couldn't speak. She went to a chiropractor, and he said, "Hey, I have this new machine, and it was called a neuro. Oh, I don't have it in front of me. A neuro something, and it you have 5 electrodes that you put on your head, and it's hitched up to the computer, and it does just this bare minimal of electrical frequency, and you do it for so long, and but you can see your brain activity going. But after 16 treatments of that, and I don't know how long she had to sit there doing it, but she had never heard of it until she went to this chiropractor. And I think that there's only 1 or 2 of these machines in the entire country, and this was years ago. And she now speaks after 16 treatments. So it's 16 weeks. She hadn't been able to speak for 3 years. 3 years. And so then she finds herself at the age of 56 after taking these, I don't know, I can't think of the word that I'm trying to come up with here, the type of treatment that's not typical. It's a more holistic treatment. And I had she was on a guest on my podcast yesterday, and we talked for quite some time, and she's amazing. She's like an amazing success story. And that's so outside the box thinking. And if we don't, we need more of that, is I guess what I'm trying to get to, my point. We need more of that. And just exactly how you said it, there's, maybe there's many less than what is needed, I think. Because there's so many things just in nature alone that was used from, since time began, used in medicinal purposes that you might even still have in your cupboard. You might have something in your cupboard right now, but you would never think to use it because no, a doctor didn't prescribe it.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
amazing. It is
It's
amazing.
amazing. It's amazing what is and what we allow. And that's where, getting loud is really about um, not only making your voice heard, but collecting individuals who believe in what your voice is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Allies,
Yep.
and finding out who's not, you know, and finding out who you need to talk to further. So if somebody's disagreeing, awesome. That means that you can learn more. You can ask them questions. You can figure stuff out.
Right.
Why they
Right.
think the way they think. Why is their perception the way they perceive? What is their, what is the
And it
cause
doesn't
of
have
their
to
thought?
be, it doesn't have to be an argument. And it doesn't have to be that one side is going to lose something. That's, that I think that's part of the problem too. Turns into an argument and one side's going to lose something, what they perceive as losing something, which is more than likely money.
Oh,
And the
yeah.
other side is, the gain to me is healthier, happier people. And isn't that what the world needs more of anyway?
And just, you know, to further that thought, it's not just that there's an argument. It's the argument is because of the reaction, and the reaction is because of the trauma, you know.
Yes.
So that's where starting with yourself is so important. One of the things I advocate in the book, and I've done an inordinate amount of, is mirror work. So staring in a mirror and trying to find something you love about yourself. Some people can't even look in the mirror. Some people will look in the mirror and they'll immediately feel uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
Some people, whatever their reaction is, but this is one of the most powerful things a person can do for themselves. Why did I react that way to my son, to my spouse, to my parent, to
Mm-hmm.
my boss, to my what about was the first time I heard that? When was the first time I remember feeling the way I was feeling? And how am I feeling about it? What was the actual feeling that I felt? Was it anger? Was it sadness? Was
Mm-hmm.
it rage? What was it?
It's almost like you're doing cognitive behavioral therapy on yourself, looking in the
Yeah.
mirror, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. In a way, it's kind of like that.
It's so you're recognizing, you're looking on your past path, recognizing those little nuggets that you took upon yourself unknowingly, and then as an adult and these things are happening and you look at yourself, and it is damn hard to look in the mirror at times and question your own self. Where did that come from? And what you were just mentioning, I've talked to a lot of folks that, like you even said, they don't even like looking in the mirror because when they look in that mirror, they see nothing but sadness, loneliness, depression, someone who's not worthy, all those negative things that just bring you down, down, down. Um, but it's also very awkward to look in the mirror at times and truly look at yourself. Truly look at yourself and not say, yeah, I'm all right, I'll work on that. No, to actually look at yourself and recognize you for all your magnificence, because we're all created as beautiful beings. We are. Everyone is beautiful in their own way, and they were made that way for a purpose. But so many times and so often we see nothing but that dark, ugly stuff that we carry around in our heads, and the things that we never say because they're too ugly. It's
Yeah. It's
interesting
it's all
that,
about that fear, right? It's all about
yes,
that fear.
exactly. You don't want to
And
face it. You fear facing yourself.
right. That's more than anybody else, you know,
Hmm.
looking in the mirror more than looking at anybody else.
Right. Yeah, that's a tough one, and that's a deep one. Because I know
Absolutely.
there's been points in my life where I didn't want to look in the mirror because I didn't want to see all of what I know I had become. This bitter person that was hanging out in darkness for so long, hated the world, hated everything. Who wants to look at that? So you avoid it. It's human nature. Avoid what you don't want to look at. Avoid what upsets you. But eventually you have to. Eventually
Well,
you have to.
you don't eventually, you know, at some point in time, you're going to die, and you may or may not have found out who you really are. And that would be a shame.
Yeah.
It would be a shame, but it is possible. It is possible, but it would be a shame to have somebody who never questioned who they were, you know, who
Right.
never said, am I truly in the right here? Like, I mean, you get into that reactive mode and you can be self-righteous. But then if you go home and you look in a mirror, you say, was that appropriate? Was that the right response? Was I reacting, or was I responding appropriately to a situation?
Right.
Like, really question, is that something that I should do again? Is that something, like, there are so many actions that we take, and the consequences may not happen for or to other people. They may just be the internal consequences that we have for ourselves. But think back on your life. Not all of your choices have been the best choice. That. That's just logical. That's just human. So go look into a mirror The parts of you that you don't like, you just say, those are the human sides of me. I'm going to look deeper into my eyes. I'm going to look deeper into myself. I'm going to cut the judgment of being human and having scar tissue and flaws and stretch marks and fat and whatnot. And I'm just going to look at myself and my life and my actions and the things and the way in which I am. And I'm going to analyze, am I on the right track? Am I not? Because just doing that every once in a while so difficult, would move your life, your business, your relationships, your society to a whole nother level. And think about it this way: if everybody was doing that, if everybody was questioning themselves and saying,
Mhm.
how much different would it be to deal with the world? Do you think there'd be as many asshole bosses, or
Right.
really, like as many people, like if the guy who just murdered somebody, went back and said, was that the right response? You think he's going to do it again? But really truly asked himself that question. Like, I know that's a silly way of looking at it, but look at it that way.
Yeah, if the world, if all people did that, and as you were talking, I just all of a sudden Louis Armstrong popped in my head. Now I've got his song "What a Wonderful World" swirling in my head right now. But I've always loved that song, and it actually goes exactly with what you're saying, because what a wonderful world it would be if we could take all that hypocrisy and judgment and hatred, because it's all coming from you. You're choosing to feel that way. You're choosing to be that way. You're choosing to act that way. No one's making you do it for the most part.
At some level. Obviously, you know, again, you're going to proper doctors now, so your body's getting healthy. So we're diminishing depression, and we're diminishing emotional strains that cause nervous disorders, that cause emotional breaks and mental breaks, right? So that stuff is less in general in a society where you're talking about like my kind of world, right? And this is just my kind of world. And if you want to join me on this kind of world, then reach out. Cool. Because I don't want to do it alone. I don't want to be on my planet alone. But I do want to be on a place where we are considerate of ourselves, where we look at ourselves on a regular basis and say, is what I'm doing part of my trauma or part of my future, And
Right,
who do I need to be to get to the next place? And all those questions that, wealthy people tend to ask. People who we consider people in power tend to ask those kinds of questions. So why don't we steal it and use it ourselves and
right,
get rid of that hierarchy and just say, hey, we don't need that as an incentive, you know? Right
right,
now, the incentives of our society are so skewed and out of whack, and they have nothing to do with making sure the humans are healthy and happy and fulfilled.
right.
Anything else, it's like we've we've turned the earth into our arcade game, and
Yeah.
we're playing out scenario after scenario inside of this box game that we created.
Yes. And if people actually, I think people fear to sit down and actually think about it and recognize it for what it is. You just have to look what's happened over the last year, and you'll see the shift in the mindset of people where they blindly follow and blindly agree. Then you said you don't want to be alone on your own planet. It has to start somewhere. It has to start somewhere. And all of the great things always started with one person going against the norm. You know, you're walking upstream. There's like all these you're walking against whitewater rapids some days probably. You're going against the current at times, and it probably feels very frustrating. I know it does for me. It can be very frustrating. And you look at the world and you're thinking, ugh, I'm just so discouraged and dismayed. I don't watch TV anymore. I stopped watching TV last March. I watch no TV because it's nothing but crap.
Yeah.
It's just
I haven't
nothing
had
it is. It's
cable.
total crap anymore. And the news and social media, I steer away from so much on social media. I use social media a lot. Yes, I do. But I'm so gravitated towards the people that are trying to spread goodness and kindness and make change for the good in the world. And that's where I've gravitated towards. And that way, I felt very strongly nudged to do that. I've always wanted to, but then you're always under that, you're working, you've got your bosses, maybe you have a spouse, or oh, I have to do things this way, and I need to do this way, and I can't think about that. I've reached a point in my life where I'm like, you know what, poop on what everybody else thinks, and going with the norm and being, the status quo. I don't want to be status quo. I want to be the one out there that you said we got to get a little loud. Yeah, I want to be the one out there getting a little loud.
Yeah.
Waking some people up, damn it.
You know, if you don't wake anybody else up, at least you wake yourself up.
Exact.
Right?
Yes. And it starts
Out
with
of a
one.
fog. I don't know if you've ever done primal screaming, right?
I've never done it intentionally, but I have done it and I felt better for it.
Oh yeah. So when you get loud, you have an added benefit of release,
Hmm.
whether you're releasing to an audience or not. So getting loud is not just about getting loud externally, but getting loud internally.
Yes. That's right. Letting your soul sing. That's how I look at it anyway.
Absolutely.
Well, I thank you so much for being with me today. I could keep on talking about this for a long time. So you're going to have to come back on again sometime. How's that?
Sounds good.
Okay. This was wonderful. Thank you so much for joining me today. And yeah, I'm going to keep me up to date on this new book that you're working on because I certainly want to hear it. And anything else that you're working on your own planet, I want to hear about that too.
Sounds good to me.
All right. Thanks again and have a wonderful day.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks.
Thank you for listening to this podcast. I appreciate all you do to create a new tomorrow for yourself and those around you. If you'd like to take this information further and are interested in joining a community of like-minded people who are all passionate about activating their vision for a better world, go to the website createanewtomorrow.com and find out how you can be part of making a bigger difference. I have a gift for you just for checking it out and look forward to seeing you take the leap and joining our private paid mastermind community. Until then, see you on the next episode.